Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
Nerve-wracking.
Squamish declares a state of local emergency as crews try to contain a nearby wildfire.
Fire in town this early in the season, you're worried about what's happening. You got a lot of hot months left.
Plus,
Who's watching these areas? Who's patrolling this?
family and friends of a 10-year-old boy killed in a crash on the water wonder who was in charge of safety enforcement. And from Colorado to Colwood, we'll speak with a doctor moving to BC as the province pushes to recruit from the U.S.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Hello, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. A wildfire just north of Squamish has now prompted a local state of emergency. The Dryden Creek wildfire is burning near the Sea to Sky Highway, and there are concerns the area's famous winds could push the flames into nearby communities. The CBC's Yasmin Ghanea reports.
Watching the sky, Ian McKay and his dad prepare as a wildfire burns above their home.
Right now, we're all here defending our properties, defending our livelihoods.
Pumping water from a nearby creek to saturate their property.
It's a beautiful place. Squamish has been my home. I'm born and raised in this neighborhood, so we're going to stick it out as long as we can.
The Dryden Creek wildfire was discovered late Monday in Squamish, about an hour north of Vancouver. It's burning alongside houses and a major highway linking Whistler, Squamish, and Vancouver. Estimates of the fire's size grew rapidly throughout the afternoon.
The fire in town this early in the season, you're worried about what's happening. You got a lot of hot months left, and not a lot of rain on the forecast right now.
The fire comes after days of record-breaking heat and is suspected to be caused by human activity.
Some people at night will see little blitz of flaring trees, but it's being driven mostly by a west-facing steep slope. This is going to be the huge challenge for our crews on this fire. There's going to be places that are inaccessible to work, which is going to make this a drawn-out event.
The fear that a relatively small but hard-to-reach fire right now could grow much larger. The District of Squamish declared a local state of emergency that could remain in place for up to 2 weeks.
It allows us to access more resources to deal with the current situation, and if the situation changes, it gives us some more powers and the ability to move more swiftly.
There are more than 80 active wildfires burning across BC. About 10 started in the last 24 hours.
And that's why I'm asking everyone to have a plan in place now before there's an emergency.
Throughout the day, helicopters dropped water buckets trying to gain control before the fire spreads. Yasmin Ghanea, CBC News, Squamish.
And Darius will have more on the weather conditions and what's coming next later in the program. Calls are growing for more boating enforcement on the water after a 10-year-old boy was killed this past weekend in North Vancouver. But as Michelle Morton reports, it's unclear exactly which agency, if any, is ultimately responsible.
Days after tragedy struck on the water in North Vancouver, loved ones of Lionel Hall say they are left with many questions.
Who's watching these areas? Who's patrolling this? Are they doing checks on the regular?
The little boy died after police say he was hit by a speedboat while being towed in an inflatable tube off Kate's Park on Saturday. Hall died at the scene. A second child was airlifted to hospital in serious condition. Police say alcohol and speed are being looked at as factors. Lionel's death has watergoers wondering about enforcement.
We have more enforcement here at the dock or the parking lot or in the water. Incidents like what happened wouldn't happen.
Enforcement is not everywhere. It can't be. So you have to take on a lot of the responsibility yourself.
These waters are so popular. This community is only growing, and that's all you see is boats. So I would like to see more enforcement.
So who is in charge? The province says enforcement on the water is federal jurisdiction, but Transport Canada says it's typically handled by the RCMP or local police marine units. North Vancouver Mounties say officers patrol the city, district, and two nations, but it's more complex on the water.
South, and then it's Burnaby, and then, east, it's Coquitlam. and then further down it's Vancouver. So where does that line, right? And so it's a shared responsibility.
Sahak says police cannot suspend a boater's license like they can for a driver on land. Lionel's family and friends are calling for more concrete responsibilities.
If it was clear, maybe, maybe little Lionel would still be here and his friend would not be in ICU.
Mounties say the driver of the speedboat was arrested and released. He has not been charged with any crimes, but RCMP say a court date has been set for late August. Michelle Morton, CBC News, North Vancouver.
BC Ferries has now chosen a shipyard in China to build its next 4 vessels.
In January of this year, we closed the RFP and we received proposals back from a number of different shipyards worldwide. Although it's worth noting that there were no responses from shipyards in BC or anywhere else in Canada.
The Crown Corporation says CMI Weihai was the clear choice in the global bidding process. The company has built ferries for Sweden, Italy, France, and including in Canada for the Marine Atlantic Ferry Company. Hooper says BC Ferries will have its own team of shipbuilding experts on site throughout construction. The vessels are expected to be ready sometime between 2029 to 2031. Still, BC's Transportation Minister has some concerns. In a statement, Mike Farnworth says, in part, he is disappointed more involvement from Canadian shipyards was not part of the contract. But he adds the 4 new vessels are clearly needed, and this contract will allow them to be in service more quickly. The province is betting big that it can recruit doctors and nurses and other healthcare staff from the U.S. to fill the gaps in BC's healthcare system. Katie DeRosa has more from one family physician who's making the big move from Colorado to Colwood on Vancouver Island.
For this Canadian-born doctor who has been practicing family medicine in Colorado for the last 6 years, his next career move is a sort of homecoming.
For me, it's hockey and being in the hills that are basically my antidepressant.
The province has been working to make it easier for American nurses and family doctors like Dr. Muthana Yakub to have their credentials recognized in BC. Yakub almost signed on with a clinic in Ontario, where he was born and spent part of his childhood, but it was the natural beauty of BC that enticed him and his wife. He will join the City of Colwood-owned medical clinic this fall. Yakub had become increasingly demoralized with the U.S.'s private healthcare system.
Some days it really feels like you're just treating the insurance company and not the patient.
The biggest catalyst, though, was the election of U.S. President Donald Trump and the anti-vaccine stance of his health secretary, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. The BC government is capitalizing on that sentiment with a $5 million ad campaign targeting healthcare workers in Washington State, Oregon, and California.
More news from Washington today. New data reveals why.
If you want to care for others in a place that cares about you, come to BC.
The Colwood Clinic's co-medical director is optimistic that BC's strategy to recruit U.S. doctors and nurses is working.
This is the first of what we hope will be many recruits.
However, the process of moving to Canada is straightforward for Yakub since he has dual citizenship. American-born doctors would have to navigate Canada's immigration system, another possible roadblock. This year, the federal government slashed in half the number of skilled workers BC can bring in through the provincial nominee program, from 8,000 to 4,000.
It has been a challenge that the provincial nominee program, the only way that British Columbia has any control over who is able to come in and work in our province, has had a decrease in its capacity.
The province plans to reserve a quarter of those spaces for healthcare workers as BC looks south of the border to fill the gaps here. Katie DeRosa, CBC News, Victoria.
To other news now, a 44-year-old American man has now been sentenced to 40 years in a U.S. federal prison in a case that began by Saanich police. 5 years ago, the parents of a 12-year-old Saanich girl went to the detachment after finding sexually explicit images from someone unknown on her phone and computer. Saanich police determined the sender was in the U.S. and started working with Homeland Security.
Essentially, our victim was the tip of the iceberg. Thanks to the information she passed to us and the hard work from the Homeland Security agents, they were able to arrest the male and locate dozens of other victims from the ages of 9 to 16 across the States, Canada, and other places in the world.
Police arrested Mark David Wallen in 2022. Last September, he pleaded guilty to making child pornography and enticing a minor to engage in criminal sexual activity. Saanich police note the American charges do not include Wallen's alleged interactions with the Saanich girl. And you can read much more about this story on our website, cbc.ca/BC. Call it a homecoming for hockey forward Jennifer Gardner. She signed a one-year contract with Vancouver's new team in the Professional Women's Hockey League.
There's something about the feeling of coming home and just the excitement around hockey in British Columbia and the future of female hockey on the West Coast. And it was just something that I wanted to be a part of. So yeah, really excited when I got the opportunity in front of me.
Gardner, who hails from Surrey, played her first Women's World Cup championship in April and helped Canada to a silver. The new PWHL Vancouver expansion team signed Gardner as part of the expansion draft. It joins Seattle next season as the league expands to 8 teams across the continent. Well, did you know Vancouver's new PWHL franchise isn't the city's first women's pro hockey team? As Karen Larson explains, there's a little-known backstory that led to today's league.
The Vancouver Griffins played in the National Women's Hockey League, the NWHL, from 2000 to 2003. Diane Nelson was the owner and started the team over her mother's objections.
When I had announced this, to my mother that I was going to leave my job for a brief period and I was going to pursue trying to showcase, high-level women's hockey, she looked at me and said, okay, this is really concerning.
The league formed in 1999 and folded in 2007.
I was very naive in my, adventure into this world of hockey, having come from education where everything's structured. And in this case, I was not really thinking that I would receive so much pushback, or I think back in the day it was, do women really play hockey? I think there was a lot of assumptions made around the motivation behind it. So I think people were trying to maintain the status quo as much as possible. So I thought the doors of opportunity that were supposed to open for me didn't.
Despite everything, Nelson says she's excited that the PWHL is expanding to Vancouver.
We got a team!
I knew Vancouver would be a good selection, but I was surprised to hear it. And then there was this sense of validation because it kind of sent me back, 25 years when I announced that there would be a professional women's hockey team in Vancouver.
Her mother is excited too.
The good news is my mother is still alive. She is 96. And when I told her that there could possibly be this announcement, she said, oh my goodness, I remember, Diane, when you were doing all of that. Good for you. So it kind of, again, validates that it wasn't a crazy idea.
Karen Larson, CBC News, Vancouver.
Back and forth accusations, departures of senior staff, and external probes are just some of the issues that have plagued local leaders in recent years. Coming up, how the province is stepping in to address political infighting. Justin McElroy is next.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and this is your CBC Inbox.
Check out CBC News BC, your local streaming channel. It's a free ad-supported TV channel that's available 24/7, delivering breaking news, including weather updates, daily headlines, and sharing stories that matter to British Columbians. Stream your favorite CBC programs like The Early Edition, BC Today, and On the Coast. CBC News BC is available on Roku, LG, and Samsung smart devices.
We're sharing really important information with the public, and I feel like this is exactly what our job is, especially as the public broadcaster, especially in morning radio. That's incredibly important.
I'm Stephen Quinn, and I love living here in Vancouver, BC. It's a city with world-renowned beauty, but it's not all sunshine and rainbows. In our new daily podcast, This is Vancouver, we're exploring the diverse range of issues and stories in the city, the good, the bad, and everything in between, as told by the people who live it every day. Don't miss This is Vancouver, available wherever you get your podcasts, and I'll talk to you soon.
The BC government says it is looking at how to rein in dysfunctional city councils. A number of communities, most notably Kamloops, have been paralyzed by councillors and mayors investigating and sometimes suing one another instead of focusing on city business. Justin McElroy has more on what prompted the government's action and how they could deal with the issue.
What happens when a city hall goes sour?
We never elected you as a fucking coach. Get that through your head.
That is in Kamloops, where Councillor Bill Sarai was yelling at Mayor Reed Hammer-Jackson in January 2023 in a private meeting recorded by Sarai. The problem for him was that he didn't tell the mayor he was recording the meeting, and when media got a hold of it, implied he didn't make it.
I made a spur-of-the-moment emotional decision, and I regret it now. At the end of the day, it was a mistake.
Last week, an independent investigator found Sarai breached the code of conduct and his oath. It's just one of dozens of controversies involving the mayor of Kamloops and how the rest of council feels about him. And if we were to list all of the stories, this would take 10 minutes. So instead of that, let's do, here is a chart. It shows the amount of money the city has spent on legal services the last 4 years, with the big spike being mostly due to all those investigations and lawsuits. And now, the province is stepping in.
If I were a citizen of Kamloops, I would be pissed.
That is the minister in charge of municipalities, Ravi Kahlon. And he says he wants to create a mechanism so that what's happening in Kamloops can't repeat itself.
I think I've come to the conclusion that this type of behavior just cannot continue to go on. It undermines our democracy. It is our goal to have something in place before the next election.
And the reason for this is not just Kamloops. Over the last 3 years, a number of communities across BC have been mired in dysfunction, often devolving into lawsuits and investigations between mayors and councillors. But there's no way to recall local politicians in BC, and a majority can't force an early election, like in provincial or federal politics. Now, one possible solution that municipalities have asked for is a provincial commissioner that could step in and issue binding rulings on the most serious issues. But when that was put to Premier David Eby 2 years ago, he said this.
Well, we certainly do, as a province, place a very high level of autonomy and responsibility on local governments. We're very reluctant to wade into matters of local government.
But that was then, this is now, and the days of local politicians investigating each other for years may be coming to an end. Justin McElroy, CBC News, Vancouver.
The Vancouver Aboriginal Health Society is hosting its third annual Father's Day Powwow honoring sacred fatherhood this weekend. Community members recently gathered to build regalia for the event, and we were there.
So we're in the cultural room of the Vancouver Aboriginal Health Society, and we are here with our regalia makers who are very busy making regalia for the Father's Day powwow.
Our regalia is used for traditional dancing, powwows, for our medicine and dancing, and how it's made and what we put into it is what we're going to get out of it.
There's a lot of attention paid to murdered and missing Indigenous women, and as well it should be, but there is also a lot of murdered and missing Indigenous men and boys, and two-spirited as well. And we don't want to forget about the men. It's important for them to be healthy, to be celebrated.
We want to make sure that our fathers are also being, you know, they're our silent protectors. They sit there and they have so much on their plate, and we just wanted to have a weekend where we can celebrate them in a good way. So we want to see more men in ribbon shirts and, you know, really give back to the community in a positive way.
It's been a really kind of challenging time lately, you know, with the Lapu Lapu Festival. And we also want to take a moment during our powwow to honor our medical personnel and first responders in light of what happened at the festival. And, you know, just know that we are our community and we do support other people. The powwow will be at the Britannia Fields, and they graciously offer their fields every year. They offer a lot of volunteer hours as well and really help us make it a great cultural event for everybody.
There's a look down at the city of Revelstoke from way up. The snow quickly disappearing from the ski runs as that summer heat continues. But there is a change on the way. Darius has your BC-wide weather forecast coming up. A bombshell report from Canada's Auditor General. Karen Hogan says the cost of the incoming fleet of stealth fighters has exploded by almost 50%. As Rafi Boudjikanian tells us, the report comes a day after the new Liberal government promised to expand military spending.
Just as Ottawa insists it is time to shore up this country's ability for self-defense, a scathing report about what it has been unable to guard against.
We found that estimated costs of the Future Fighter Capability Project have significantly increased.
The government announced a deal to purchase 88 F-35 fighter jets nearly 3 years ago, eyeing a little more than a decade for full delivery and operation. They were supposed to cost $19 billion. The Auditor General thinks that might increase to $27.7 billion, blaming in part rising inflation and a heightened global demand for munitions, but also saying the Defense Department used outdated costing estimates.
There was more recent information available about the costs of the actual fighter jets that could have been used and factored into that. And the slowness of putting plans into action have resulted in the need for interim measures.
For one, Canada's 2 aging fighter bases in Bagotville, Quebec and Cold Lake, Alberta both need to be renovated so they can house the new planes at all. The F-35s also require training engineering staff and specially pilots.
Are you concerned that the F-35s are overpriced and are not being delivered on time?
It's raised questions on whether the soaring costs mean these planes will even all be fit to fly by 2033.
Not only was Canada deeply affected by the pandemic and the United States, but every participating NATO partner has had to contend with the forces that the pandemic played on the entire acquisition and development.
But one industry observer says problems with the jets far predate COVID, going back to designers' plans at Lockheed Martin.
They tried to pack in too many different capabilities, too many new technologies, many of which were not fully developed before their design was incorporated into the overall program.
Still waiting in the wings, an entirely different review of the F-35 program commissioned by the Defense Department. The government saying it's not ruling out leaving this contract, but it's committed to receive the first of its planes next year. Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News, Ottawa.
U.S. President Donald Trump is defending his decision to send the National Guard and Marines to Los Angeles, where people are protesting federal immigration raids. Trump says the city would be, quote, burning to the ground if he hadn't made that move. But as Sasha Petrusik reports, both California state and L.A. officials say the deployment is unjustified.
California's governor has filed an emergency motion asking a federal judge to block National Guard members and Marines from getting involved in immigration raids. President Donald Trump ordered 4,700 of the troops to move into California to protect ICE agents going after what he calls illegal immigrants. About half of these troops are supposed to take positions around 2 federal buildings in downtown Los Angeles. All of this against the wishes of Governor Gavin Newsom.
This theatrical display of toughness by a president of the United States who's unhinged and has now crossed a red line in this country.
The streets of LA have been relatively quiet for the past couple of days after a weekend of sporadic rioting. There have been protests against the immigration raids and some confrontations between demonstrators and police. But the mayor says it's nothing officers can't handle by themselves. In fact, Trump took credit for that calm today, and at the same time painted a picture of chaos that might justify further federal intervention.
If there's an insurrection, I would certainly invoke it. We'll see, but I can tell you last night was terrible. The night before that was terrible.
But while Trump is pushing the boundaries of presidential and federal powers, some serious issues are being raised by Congress. What powers will those troops have? Normally, U.S. law doesn't allow them to get involved in civilian policing. And where will the money come from? $134 million worth. All of that was part of a heated exchange at a congressional committee today.
The chaos is the bait, and the switch is a constitutional crisis and power grab. Trump created this political distraction to divide us and keep our focus away from his policies.
You asked about the situation in Los Angeles, and we believe ICE agents should be allowed to be safe in doing their operations, and we have deployed National Guard and the Marines to protect them in the execution of their duties.
For Trump, the heavy emphasis on the military power he commands continues with a speech to troops at Fort Bragg in North Carolina this afternoon and a massive military parade that's set to shut down a large part of Washington, D.C. this weekend. Sasha Petrusik, CBC News, Washington.
It's a coming out story for all of nature's creatures, great and small. A new wildlife documentary highlights the missing science behind animal sexual behavior. That story is up next.
So I know when I really like a song, if within the first 3 seconds, I'm already vibing to it.
Hey, I'm Rohith Joseph. Vibin' is the new show all about discovering great new songs and fresh artists from across BC and beyond.
It's not one person dictating what good music is. It's the community sharing what good music is.
Stream Vibin' on CBC Listen.
A new film is challenging mainstream biology's blind spot for queer behavior in the natural world. Animal Pride is not your typical wildlife documentary. It celebrates diversity and takes an irreverent view, to say the least, of the animal kingdom, from orcas on BC's west coast to albatrosses on Hawaiian islands. Here's a snippet of Animal Pride. Have a look.
Am I the only gay animal? Gay. Is being queer natural?
Queerness is intrinsically a part of the natural world. This is where the penis comes out and goes in.
Animal Pride has won multiple awards on international film festival circuits. Writer and director Connell Bradwell joins us from a mildly picturesque Victoria. Connell, good to see you. First of all, what inspired you to take on this project?
Yeah, my inspiration for this project came from my work as a biologist with killer whales. So I was out on a small boat just off here on Vancouver Island looking at killer whales, and I saw them doing some pretty gay stuff. And I was really surprised by that. And as a biologist who's gay, I was like, well, why am I surprised? Is this something that's common? You know, why do I not know about this? And that kind of started this whole journey, which moved into, you know, reaching out to a production company and bringing on our director, Rio, and yeah, making this whole documentary about gay animals and queerness in the natural world. But yeah, it all sparked from watching two male orcas rubbing against each other.
Was there anything else beyond, as in your work as a biologist, you've seen all sorts of things in all sorts of places. Was there something that stood out for you that you'd never seen before that you discovered?
Oh yeah, there were so many things that I saw that I had never seen before and discovered during the documentary. The one that comes out, it sticks in my mind, is the banana slugs, because banana slugs have this crazy mating ritual that goes on for hours and hours and hours. I mean, slugs don't move quick. And so we got to go and watch these slugs, which are hermaphrodites, who, you know, they're both male and female, and they just, yeah, have the craziest mating performance almost, and we got to see it and document it and showcase it in a way that's probably never been done before. So that was something, yeah, that sticks in my mind. I'll never forget it.
Why do you think a documentary like this is important right now?
I think this documentary is really important right now because, you know, we're at a time where there are, you know, rollbacks in legislation and just in general around queer people. And so I think it's really important to just like reaffirm that, you know, queerness is natural. It's an intrinsic part of the natural world and nature. And also in the documentary, we showcase how, you know, book bans and in science, you know, when a lot of the scientific research that was happening on gay animals 100 years ago was illegal for them to publish their data. So it never got published. And that impacted science and conservation. That's still being impacted by, that's still happening today. So it's really important for us, I think, to recognize that, you know, things that happen to queer people also roll over into other aspects of life. And so, yeah, I think it's really important now. And it's Pride Month, and it's Pride soon, so that's exciting.
Beyond the orcas and the banana slugs, was there another standout or favorite moment for you while making this film?
Yeah, we got to go to Antarctica with Penguin Watch and Quark Expeditions, and it was the most incredible place I have ever been I don't think it's one of the most incredible places you could ever go to. And so we got to go all the way to Antarctica to see penguin research, and particularly looking at same-sex penguin pairs and looking at this new project with Penguin Watch and how you know, gay penguins are basically impacting and having a great time down in Antarctica. It was just incredible to go down there.
The natural world at work. And for anyone who wanting to watch this, where can they see Animal Pride?
Yeah, they can watch Animal Pride on CBC Gem and on the CBC Nature of Things YouTube channel.
Connell Bradwell, writer and director of Animal Pride, we appreciate your time and your expertise. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Canadian health professionals are now spreading the word about the risk measles poses during pregnancy. This follows the death of a newborn that had contracted the virus in the womb of its unvaccinated mother. Alison Northcott looks at the potential complications and the best way to stay protected.
Julia O'Reilly is due to give birth to her first child next month. She's vaccinated against measles, which can help protect her and her baby, but she still worries as cases keep climbing in Ontario.
We do what we can, but hope that others also do what they can as well.
In the Canadian Medical Association Journal, experts warn pregnant people with measles are at a higher risk of pneumonia, hepatitis, and at a tenfold higher risk of death than those who are not pregnant.
We would want to know that every woman who's planning to get pregnant is vaccinated, because measles in a pregnancy can have complications, including death.
According to Public Health Ontario, during this outbreak, 39 people have been infected with measles, about 2% of the province's cases, and 6 infants have been born already infected. The virus can lead to serious outcomes.
The other things that we think about are the risk of spontaneous abortion, that means miscarriage. And then, of course, there can be an increased risk of fetal demise as well, which means babies passing away or stillbirth.
Last week, Canada recorded its first death linked to the outbreak. A premature baby with other serious underlying medical conditions contracted measles before birth from its unvaccinated mother. Ontario health officials say the virus was a contributing factor.
Experts say vaccination before pregnancy is the best protection because the vaccine is not recommended during pregnancy. If someone is pregnant and unvaccinated and is exposed to measles, they can get an antibody therapy to reduce the risk.
For those unsure about their vaccine status, routine prenatal testing doesn't usually screen for measles to see if patients are protected.
This is something we definitely have to reflect on as we see the growing numbers.
As Canada's largest outbreak in years continues. Alison Northcott, CBC News, Montreal.
The weather update is brought to you by BC Cancer Foundation. Support BC Cancer Foundation by leaving a gift in your will and join our 90-year legacy of driving life-saving innovations.
Our weather and climate specialist Darius Madavi is here with the forecast, and we're watching what's happening in Squamish very closely. And busy map there, Darius.
That's right. Air quality statements across much of Western Canada, including up in the northeast and on parts of Vancouver Island. And then we've got these weather statements still sitting on much of southern BC, warning of those elevated temperatures. So those should start to come down in a couple days. Now, like you said, Dan, let's zoom in on Squamish where we have this this fire that's still burning. You can see the Sea to Sky Highway here. The fire is right up here, right around here. It grew from about 5 hectares to about 8 hectares now, just earlier today. Not too much growth overnight, but there was some. And again, we heard earlier in the show about those winds blowing through, those afternoon winds typical of Squamish. That is something we're going to be watching over the next couple days. It's not something easily captured by models, so we're going to take a look at some of those projected wind gusts here, but they're not always great at capturing those really local features like those winds typical of Squamish. So be aware, some of those winds could be higher than what we see here, but as you'll notice, most of them staying far away. Once we get into Thursday, the possibility for a few, but for the most part, what we're watching is those temperatures coming down as we get into Thursday and the potential for a few scattered showers. It's not going to be much precipitation, but it will be more than we've had in well over a week now. And those elevated temperatures coming down significantly for this area will be good news in terms of that fire situation. Still something to watch closely, though, especially over the next couple days as we have that evacuation alert in place, but fortunately, no order as of yet. Across the rest of the province, as we watch those temperatures start to slowly come down, still mid-30s today and tomorrow in the southern interior. We're going to also be looking for the potential of some thunderstorms. You can see some scattered showers popping up in parts of the interior, but it does look like if we see those thunderstorms, the lightning will outweigh the amount of moisture that we get. That ridge is moving off. That, again, good news in terms of the temperatures coming down. Bad news in terms of when we see those ridges move off, after we've had a period of elevated temperatures, those thunderstorms can really easily ignite new fire starts. That is something to be watching. Good news, people will get some rain, good for the plants, but here on the coast at least, but something to be watching for in the interior. Because again, a long period, 4 or 5 days of those elevated temperatures before we start to see the potential for some lightning. Keep an eye out for that tomorrow in the southeast. and then Thursday in both the southeast and the southern interior. That's something we'll be watching closely and something that I know the BC Wildfire Service is very concerned about. Conditions across the province tomorrow, overall, nothing too crazy, looking like pretty similar to what we've seen the last few days, with a little bit more cloud moving in from many areas. Wednesday, again, mixed skies, a little bit warmer inland, 26 feeling like, +2 with the humidex. Thursday, expected to be a bit showery before the cloud clears out really fast for Friday.
Okay, Darius, thanks very much. And before we go, we should update BC Wildfire now saying the fire just north of Squamish is 14.4 hectares large.
Thank you.
For 50 seasons, he has ferried hikers across the Nit-a-Nat Narrows. You're going to meet this West Coast Trail legend after this. Up to 8,000 people hike the West Coast Trail on Vancouver Island every summer. Now, to complete the 75-kilometer trail, you need to take a ferry across Nit-a-Nat Narrows if you don't want to swim to your campsite.
You would not. That ferry has been operated by the owner of the famous Nit-a-Nat Crab Shack for 50 years this season. CBC's Jackie McKay visited the Crab Shack and has more.
If you were lucky enough to get a reservation for the West Coast Trail, by the time you get here, you're probably pretty tired. And if you don't want to swim to your next campsite, you're going to need a ride. Hey there!
Supporting hikers on one of Canada's most iconic backpacking trails is what the Edgar family does. That's the legacy of this man.
Here we are. 50 years now. This year is my 50th year beginning. But I have a crew now and they do all the work and I'm just like a director now.
Staff on the dock know him as Dad, Grandpa, brother, husband, brother-in-law, but the hikers call him Carl Edgar from the Nit Nat Crab Shack.
Carl became famous out here. He's in all the books, he's in the documentaries.
Edgar has been ferrying hikers across the Nit Nat Narrows full-time now for 50 years. He's at the 32.5 kilometer mark along the trail. This job kind of just came to him.
I used to be riding back and forth here, going crab fishing and fishing on the ocean. And I used to see people standing on the beach. And I didn't know what they were doing here. Ready?
The very first time Edgar saw a hiker, he was 14 years old. He says he remembers it because it was the same summer Neil Armstrong landed on the moon.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
I was living at Wyak and there some hikers came out and other kids said, there's somebody over there. He wants a ride across, but he's got something on his back. Like we didn't know what a backpack was.
Edgar took over the ferry operation full-time in 1975.
About 35 years ago, I met a couple out here. They met on the trail. They married up here. Then they honeymooned on the trail. And then they came back with a 3-year-old and a 3-month-old baby. 3 months. 3 months was the youngest hiker I ever seen out here. Sometimes I feel old when I see third-generation hikers now. They come back and they say, I hiked this with my father when I was 12, and now I'm 36 and I got my 12-year-old, and oh, I feel old then.
He recalls when the toll was $1 a hiker, but his brother remembers when the price doubled.
I used to collect it. It used to be $2 when I helped him, and I'd have a whole stack of $2 bills at the end of the day.
The West Coast Trail covers the traditional territories of the Huu-ay-aht, Titi-Dot, and Patchi-Dot First Nations. The area became the Pacific Rim National Park in 1970, and 3 years later, the West Coast Trail opened. And for generations, trail guardians like Edgar's brother-in-law have been looking after it.
My dad did 1973 to 1981, so I'm a second-generation worker on the trail. I do minor maintenance, talk to hikers, help evac, and I did that for 16 seasons.
Cook also helped Edgar out at the Crab Shack off and on for about 20 years. But the Crab Shack doesn't take resumes. The only way to get a job here is to be an Edgar or you marry one.
They asked me, what's your succession plan? And I said, it's been in effect for forever. My sons and daughters and grandchildren will run it because they know how to do everything inside and out.
I grew up doing this. It's a part of me.
It was always one of my dreams. Like in the early years, I used to sit here in my dugout canoe with a lunch bag and a thermos of tea, and I'd sit in the rain waiting for hikers. And I used to say, I wish I had a roof and a heater and some hot food, and it would make life a lot easier.
A lot of people see Carl and they see what he has today. They see everything that he has today, but they don't see the 50 years that it took to get where he is today.
Everything you see here, the Edgar family built, evolving into this haven for hikers.
The first year when the cooking happened, we were just giving away part of our lunch. Just word of mouth went real fast, and it's like, people are asking and asking and asking and asking for it. It's like, okay, we gotta put a price on this. It's becoming lots of work.
And the hikers, the hikers named us the Crab Shack.
I tried to call it the sea level. It didn't go though.
Yeah, hikers weren't having it. Nope,
No,
you're the crab shack.
This is the crab shack.
In the past 50 years, the shuttle has only stopped running once, in June 1995. And even then, it was just for a couple of hours.
When we got married, yeah. Yeah, it shut down once that year because we invited all the wardens and all the guardians, everybody.
Edgar and Shelley's youngest daughter says she wishes more people had parents just like hers. She's done other work, but chooses to keep coming back every summer.
My dad taught us all how to fish with the nets and fishing on the ocean. At home, get to come out on the lake every day. Not very many of them know where to fish or what size net to use or what size hooks to use.
Carl is carrying on the life skills and the teachings of his ancestors and the people before him. This is considered one of the most dangerous spots on the island, is navigating in and out of this lake. And he is teaching our children how to do that. And now our grandchildren are learning. So to me, it just really means family.
I'm really grateful, I'm really proud of him that he saw a glimpse of the future when he met all these first hikers who came through. I'm glad that he chose to stay here for his future, for us.
If you're one of the thousands of hikers who's been lucky enough to do the West Coast Trail, you've been picked up by Edgar, or at least someone in his family. And for the next 50 years, an Edgar will still be picking you up. Jackie McKay for CBC Indigenous at the Nitnat Narrows in the DT First Nations territory.
How cool was that?
I've been so excited for that to come out.
Because
I'm doing the West Coast Trail this summer.
there you go.
Yeah.
And you'll be able to meet Carl Edgar.
I'm so excited.
You know, plug down some cash for a Dungeness crab.
Yep. I was told to get the ultimate.
Yeah.
I was told it was worth it.
Oh, excellent.
I think after a few days of eating only rehydrated, dehydrated meals.
Yeah. You'll want
It'll
some
be
crab.
good.
There
Yeah.
we are.
Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6.
We'll be back at 11. Take care.